Listen carefully. The moment a woman emotionally checks out doesn't start with cheating. It starts quietly. So quietly that most men miss it completely. There's no screaming, no dramatic goodbye, no obvious warning, just a subtle shift in energy, and by the time you feel it, the decision has already been made in her mind. Here's the truth no one tells you. Women don't leave when they stop loving you. They leave when they stop feeling safe, seen, and emotionally met. Cheating is rarely the first betrayal. Emotional abandonment is. And most of the time, it happens long before another man ever appears. At first, she tried. That's the part men forget. She tried to talk. She tried to explain what felt missing. She tried to share her fears, her needs, her emotional weight. Not perfectly, not calmly every time. Sometimes it came out as frustration, sometimes as tears, sometimes as silence. And each time she reached out, she was checking one thing. Does he see me now? Me? When those moments were ignored, minimized, joked away, or met with defensiveness, something inside her shifted. Not anger, not hatred. Something far more dangerous. Acceptance. The acceptance that she is emotionally alone, even while standing next to you. This is the exact moment the emotional checkout begins. She stops asking for reassurance, not because she doesn't need it, but because she's tired of asking. She stops arguing, not because things are better, but because she's done fighting for connection. Men often celebrate this phase. She's calmer now. She's not complaining anymore. They think peace has arrived. In reality, grief has. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When a woman stops reacting, she has started detaching. Emotional reactions mean she still cares. Silence means she's conserving energy for life without you. She begins to pull her emotions inward. She shares less, laughs less deeply, touches with less warmth. Sex becomes mechanical or disappears entirely, not as punishment, but because emotional safety is gone. And for a woman, desire cannot survive in an environment where she feels unseen. Inside her mind, a quiet narrative starts forming. I'm on my own. I can't rely on him emotionally. This is just how it is. These thoughts are not spoken, they're internalized. And once they settle, they don't leave easily. This is where men make the fatal mistake. They wait for proof, they wait for cheating, they wait for a breakup speech, they wait for something loud enough to justify taking action. But emotional exits don't announce themselves. They whisper. By the time another man enters the picture, if he ever does, he's not the cause. He's the symptom. He didn't take her. She had already left emotionally. He just arrived when she was empty enough to feel seen again. And here's the part that hurts the most. If you're hearing this and feeling defensive, that's not because it's wrong. It's because somewhere deep down, you recognize the distance, the shorter replies, the colder tone, the way she's physically present but emotionally unreachable. This section isn't about blame. It's about awareness, because the moment a woman emotionally checks out is the moment most men are still asleep, and waking up after that moment is far harder than noticing it when it begins. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, don't look away. What you do before that emotional exit determines everything that comes after. Once the emotional checkout begins, her behavior changes in ways most men misunderstand. Not dramatically, not obviously. It's subtle enough to confuse you, but consistent enough to reshape the entire relationship dynamic. She becomes more agreeable, but not because she's happier. She stops pushing back, stops correcting you, stops trying to be understood. This is where many men relax and think, finally, peace. But what's really happening is emotional withdrawal. She's no longer investing energy into changing the relationship because, in her mind, the relationship has already reached its limit. Her expectations quietly drop. She doesn't expect you to listen deeply anymore. She doesn't expect emotional support. She doesn't expect romance. And when expectations die, attachment weakens. This isn't maturity, it's resignation. You may notice she starts handling things alone. Problems she once shared with you are now dealt with privately or shared with friends instead. Not because she doesn't trust you, but because she no longer feels emotionally held by you. Independence looks attractive on the surface, but in this phase, it's defensive. She's building a version of life that doesn't emotionally require you. Her tone changes too. Less warmth, less curiosity. Conversations become transactional. Logistics replace connection. Did you eat becomes, what time are you coming home? Emotional language fades because she no longer feels emotionally safe enough to express vulnerability. Here's a truth that's rarely spoken. When a woman stops complaining, she has stopped believing she will be heard. Complaints are an attempt to repair. Silence is an attempt to survive. She may still smile, still show up, still post pictures together, but internally, she's detaching. She's watching how it feels to imagine life without you. She's noticing how much lighter she feels when she doesn't expect emotional fulfillment from you anymore. That internal experiment is dangerous because once she experiences peace without expectation, the emotional bond weakens fast. This is also when her memory changes. She starts remembering the relationship differently. The good moments feel distant. The disappointments feel heavier. Her brain is slowly rewriting the emotional story to make leaving easier, because emotional exits require internal justification. You might feel her pulling away physically too. Less spontaneous touch, less lingering affection, not out of cruelty, but because intimacy without emotional safety feels hollow. For her, emotional closeness fuels physical closeness. When one dies, the other follows. And here's where the misunderstanding becomes fatal. Many men respond to this phase with logic, advice, solutions, or worse, emotional withdrawal of their own. They mirror her distance instead of addressing it. They assume she just needs space. What she actually needs is emotional presence, but by now, she no longer believes she'll get it. This is the stage where she stops seeing you as her emotional partner and starts seeing you as a familiar presence, comfortable, predictable, but no longer essential. An emotional non-essentiality is the quiet death of desire. She's not angry anymore. She's not plotting. She's not looking for revenge. She's grieving the relationship you could have been together. And grief looks calm on the outside. If you sense this phase and ignore it, the next shift will be even quieter, but far more irreversible. Because once a woman fully emotionally disconnects, reconnecting feels unnatural to her, almost like going backward. This section isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to sharpen your awareness. Because the signs are there long before cheating, long before breakups, long before goodbye speeches. And noticing them early is the only real leverage you ever get. Here's the moment most men never realize they've lost her, when her emotional world starts opening somewhere else, even if no one else is there yet. This is not about another man. It's about emotional replacement, and it happens internally first. She stops bringing her inner life to you. Her fears, her dreams, her random thoughts, the small emotional moments that once bonded you, those now stay locked inside or get shared elsewhere. A friend, a coworker, a journal, sometimes even silence. The key shift is this: you are no longer her emotional home, and when that happens, loyalty begins to change form. Not physically, emotionally. Loyalty stops being about us and starts becoming about self-preservation. She tells herself, I can't depend on him emotionally, so I have to protect myself. This is where men misunderstand female faithfulness. Women don't stay loyal because of rules. They stay loyal because of emotional attachment. When that attachment weakens, temptation doesn't feel like betrayal. It feels like relief. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because she wants to feel alive again. You might notice she's happier away from you than with you. Lighter, more expressive, more energized. That's not because someone else is making her happy. It's because emotional weight lifts when expectations die. And that contrast silently confirms her internal decision. Her boundaries change. She becomes more private. Her phone habits might shift, not always hiding something, but guarding her inner world. She's reclaiming emotional territory that once belonged to the relationship. This is self-protection, not deception. Another painful truth: she starts losing respect, not because you're a bad man, but because emotional leadership feels absent to her. Emotional leadership doesn't mean control. It means presence, the ability to hold emotional space without deflecting, dismissing, or shutting down. When she feels she's always the one reaching emotionally, something inside her stops trusting you with her vulnerability. And once vulnerability stops flowing, intimacy follows it out the door. This is also where she begins to rationalize distance. She tells herself stories. He's just not that emotional. This is just how men are. I shouldn't expect more. These thoughts sound forgiving, but they're actually resignation, and resignation is the final emotional checkpoint before disconnection. Here's the harsh reality. By the time cheating becomes a possibility, the emotional bond has already been severed. Cheating doesn't feel like crossing a line when the emotional bridge is already gone. It feels like stepping onto solid ground after being emotionally unstable for too long. That's why asking, "Why did she cheat?" is the wrong question. The real question is, when did she stop feeling emotionally safe with me? Because that's the moment everything shifted. Most men try to fix this stage with surface level changes: more attention, more gifts, more effort. But effort without emotional attunement feels empty. She doesn't want more from you. She wants you, your presence, your emotional availability, your ability to listen without fixing. If she senses that you're only showing up because you're afraid of losing her, it's already too late. Fear-based effort feels unstable. What she needed was consistent emotional safety long before desperation appeared. And here's the most uncomfortable truth of all. Once a woman stops imagining a future with you emotionally, rebuilding that image is incredibly difficult. Not impossible, but it requires emotional maturity most people never develop. This section isn't about condemning men. It's about exposing the invisible mechanics of emotional disconnection. Because once you understand how it actually happens, you stop being blindsided by outcomes and start seeing the warning signs when they still matter. If this feels heavy, it should. Awareness always comes before change. This is the point where her internal decision quietly solidifies, and almost nothing on the surface changes. That's what makes it dangerous. She still shows up, still plays her role, still laughs at the right moments. But emotionally, she has crossed a line that most men don't even know exists. She stops hoping. Hope is the last emotional thread. When a woman hopes, she stays. When hope dies, she plans. Not consciously at first, emotionally. She starts preparing her nervous system for life without you. And once the nervous system adapts, going back feels wrong to her body, even if her mind tries. This is why sudden wake-up moments from men rarely work. Flowers after neglect, deep talks after months of avoidance, promises after emotional absence. To a man, these feel like repair. To her, they feel confusing and unsafe, because consistency matters more than intensity, and intensity at the wrong time feels unstable. She begins to detach her identity from the relationship. She no longer sees herself as your partner first. She sees herself as an individual who happens to be with you, for now. That shift is massive, because once her sense of self no longer includes the relationship, leaving doesn't feel like losing herself. It feels like reclaiming herself. You may sense her being emotionally colder, but not cruel, polite, controlled, almost professional. That's not because she hates you. It's because she's regulating herself. Strong emotions require attachment. Detachment requires control. This is also when forgiveness becomes irrelevant. Men think fixing means apologizing, explaining, owning mistakes. But what she needed wasn't acknowledgement. It was emotional safety over time. Apologies without emotional change don't rebuild trust. They remind her of how long she felt alone. Here's something almost no one talks about. Women don't emotionally leave because of one big mistake. They leave because of many small moments where they felt unseen. Missed chances, dismissed feelings, emotional absence disguised as being busy, being logical, or being strong. Strength without emotional presence feels like distance to her. By now, she has stopped expecting you to understand her. And when understanding dies, connection follows. This is why arguing at this stage feels pointless. She's not trying to convince you anymore. She's conserving energy. If another man appears during this phase, he doesn't need to be better than you. He just needs to feel different, more present, more curious, more emotionally responsive. That contrast alone can feel intoxicating, not because she's weak, but because she's been emotionally starved. But even without another man, the outcome often stays the same. Emotional detachment doesn't require replacement, it only requires sustained disconnection. This is where men often ask, "Why didn't she tell me it was this bad?" The answer is painful. She did, earlier, in the only way she knew how, through tone, through emotion, through repeated attempts at connection. When those attempts failed, she stopped speaking. Silence is not peace. It's the sound of hope leaving the room. At this stage, trying to control, interrogate, or demand reassurance accelerates the exit. Pressure confirms her belief that emotional safety doesn't exist with you. What she needed was calm presence, not panic. This section isn't about blaming you for missing signs. It's about understanding that emotional exits happen long before physical ones. And once they stabilize, reversing them requires something rare, genuine emotional maturity, not tactics. And that brings us to the final truth, what actually matters before it's too late. Here's the truth most men never hear, because it's not dramatic enough to sell fear, and not comforting enough to offer excuses. By the time a woman emotionally checks out, the relationship is no longer operating on love, it's operating on habit, and habits don't fight to stay. This is why last-minute efforts feel invisible to her. She's not cold, she's complete, emotionally complete without you. That's the part men struggle to understand. She didn't stop caring overnight. She cared until caring hurt. Then she stopped to protect herself. If you're watching this and thinking, "I would never let it get that far," understand this. Emotional disconnection rarely announces itself as danger. It disguises itself as normal life. Busy schedules, stress, comfort, routine, the slow erosion of presence. The real lesson here isn't about preventing cheating, it's about understanding emotional responsibility. Emotional leadership doesn't mean being perfect, it means being present when it matters, especially when it's uncomfortable. Presence looks like listening without fixing. It looks like taking emotions seriously even when they don't make logical sense. It looks like consistency instead of intensity. It looks like making emotional safety a daily behavior, not a crisis response. When a woman feels emotionally safe, temptation loses its power, not because she's morally stronger, but because she's emotionally fulfilled. Fulfillment creates loyalty. Deprivation creates vulnerability. If you're already too late, here's the hard truth. You cannot negotiate attraction back. You cannot argue someone into emotional attachment. And you cannot force someone to reopen a heart that learned to close for survival. What you can do is learn, not to manipulate the next woman, not to control outcomes, but to become the kind of man whose presence creates emotional safety naturally. That starts with emotional self-awareness, understanding your own defenses, your avoidance, your discomfort with vulnerability, your tendency to dismiss feelings instead of holding them. Most men weren't taught this. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. If you're still in a relationship and recognize these signs early, there is hope, not through grand gestures, but through quiet, consistent emotional availability, through showing up before she stops hoping, through noticing her before she has to pull away. And if you're already on the other side of this, hurt, confused, betrayed, understand this. Her emotional exit was not about your worth. It was about unmet emotional needs that neither of you fully understood at the time. Use that pain. Let it sharpen you, not harden you. Because the men who grow from this don't just keep relationships longer, they create deeper ones, healthier ones, ones where emotional connection doesn't have to be begged for or explained. And here's the final question I want you to sit with and answer honestly in the comments. At what moment do you think emotional connection starts dying in a relationship? And what would you do differently now that you see it? If this video hit something real for you, like it. Subscribe if you want deeper truths most people avoid, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it before silence becomes goodbye.